Thank you for joining us again in the Educating the Billions mini-series. This episode will focus a little bit on the question, is China an option for you? Uh, Once again with me is Mark and David. And David, I would like to start with you. Um, Given the current atmosphere, COVID, education, regulatory changes in China, a lot of volatility. Do you still recommend that UK schools and universities continue to look at China as an option?
I think you can't look into the 21st century without seeing China as the prevailing and lasting and most significant option on the table. I don't know whether you saw the Brookings Institute data that came out a few months back about predicted growth over the next 10 years up to 2030. They were saying that the middle class income generation across the globe would be about $20 trillion by 2030. Of that, 1 trillion would be in Europe and America, and 19 would be in Asia. Now, what that means realistically is that investment opportunities for developing new product, new schools, new opportunities is going to be in the East. We know from McKinsey research that the middle class in China is growing at about 35 million a year. That's with people with enough money in their pockets to be able to pay the fees. And we know that even with the one-child policy been removed as of a couple of years back, there's still a lot of single-child families where there are 6 income bases behind that one child. There's the 2 parents and the 2 grandparents behind that who are able to pay for that child's education. So in terms of market, there's a huge number of children out there in a population of 1.4 billion with a massively growing middle class that can fuel your school. There's also investors that have got large sums of money out of the property booms of the last 20 years. They've got money that they are looking to use and to use creatively to try and get a return on investment. Many of the building projects are in urban conurbations where there's a large population, where building programs are going up for flats, housing and so on, and the school is placed in the center of those new communities in order to inflate attraction to that market and to increase the value of property. In fact, many of these investors, as we know, are actually making their money not from the investment in the school, but from the inflated price of property around the school because of the school's, we hope, growing reputation, which is why they want a UK brand to give it some kudos. So I'd certainly say that they should continue to look. Governments will be worried about regulatory limitations, and those are significant issues and have to be worked through. It's no longer anything like as easy as it was. But I don't think they should be completely put off by that. I think in earlier answers that we've said, if the investor and the intermediary that's working with the school in the UK is prepared to stick at it long enough and is to continue to put in good sums of money into the development of a high quality product, there is a market there that will benefit from that new school. I think a lot of governments are also concerned about reputational damage that can be done if the school goes the wrong way and maybe fails or is ineffective. I think there's a lot of firewalls that you can put up between the school in the UK and its sister school in China that don't necessarily result in the diminution of the reputation of the UK school because something has gone awry. Clearly, the school in the UK will send representatives to check that school that's been started is working well, and there will be contractual and moral obligations to deliver quality. But I suspect that those are issues that can all be got round, and that governors that have those concerns don't need to worry too much. The market is going to continue to grow. I think everybody's been amazed at the bounce back after COVID here in China. And as a result, a good business plan and a successfully well-led school is going to do well, make money, both for the investor, but also for the franchise school back in the UK. So yes, I would see it as an option, but there needs to be patience, and there needs, and this is the point that I think Mark has made many times, there needs to be the right investor that you work with. If you go with the wrong one, who's looking for a quick buck, you could be in trouble.
Thanks a lot for that, David. And Mark, do you see something similar with your clients? Do you see that there are perhaps theoretical risks that might be overblown out of proportion in comparison to the actual practical risk in considering China as an option for their business?
Yeah, well, so I've been, I've been living most of my time now in the UK since summer 2018, and I was a bit surprised about the level of knowledge of China. I think a lot of people have a much outdated view of China, or perhaps a more fearful view of China than I expected. I think COVID has exacerbated that, so there is a little bit more, or much more animosity towards China than there used to be. I think that will go back a bit. And so one of the staging questions when we talk to schools is often raised by, one or more of the governors, is about the political climate in China, or, restraints on things like freedom of speech. Sometimes they talk about religion, etc. I think, my personal view is, the world and China have both benefited by China's opening up to the world. I mean, it's made the world a richer place. The fact that Chinese people, have become wealthier, that they can afford these middle class luxuries like, a good education for their children, trips abroad. I think these are things that should be embraced. I think it would be a mistake to categorize China as being really a very hostile kind of country. And so I would think, for those governors, it is perhaps there's more benefit, especially in education, about a rapprochement, or you have an engagement with somebody in that way. It's really the epitome of soft power, which the UK does very well. Soft power is one of its strengths. So I think, it was interesting in one discussion with governors, it was a bit about different regulations that China's brought out and things like that. But the other school that they were looking to set up was in Saudi Arabia. So it was a little bit strange for me. I would have thought, I don't know Saudi Arabia well, so maybe I'm misjudging them. But I would have thought China is basically a secular country. It is a country that you can either understand what they're doing, and of course they've become proud of their achievements in the last years. But I think really for us, as David mentioned, with the economic way the world is going, we can't always expect the Chinese side to follow Western, ways of doing things. And so I think, that's a decision that the school has to make. If, say, if a school has a very strong religious bent, then it might be difficult just to carry out a school as you do in the UK in China. But I think the Chinese authorities, it's clear what the red lines are, and as long as you follow them, you won't have a problem with them. And then I think, the second issue is about reputational loss, not related to doing something in China so much, but about something going wrong in China. And, of course, things can go wrong everywhere. They can go wrong in your home jurisdiction. And I think, there are a number of UK schools who've really treated China as a bit of a, franchising model, or just, slap a brand on a building, we'll call it a school, and they don't really have much involvement. And, that's where there's a higher risk of something going wrong. So I think, if you want to do China, the biggest reputational risk I think you do have is not being involved in your project, and, you will not be in a position to reduce the risk of something going wrong. So I think as long as you're involved with it, you know what the red lines are, and you do a proper job, and, the school in the UK is knowing what's happening on the ground in China, I think the risks are very, very low.
Thanks a lot for that, Mark. David, what do you think about Mark's answer?
Yeah, I agree. I think the devil is always in the detail, and getting a good implementation plan is absolutely key if you're going to be able to land in China effectively. Those groups that are landing well are those that are prepared to invest in the infrastructure. There's no question that to get a good school, a single good school in China is quite difficult. You need a wide resource base to ensure continuity of educational quality, of staffing. And to do that, there needs to be a central team, and a central team based in China who are able to step in when something goes awry in the school. You can't rely on the mothership back in the UK to pick up a problem if one occurs. There needs to be a solution ready-made there in China, which is why those groups that I think in the long term will succeed are those that have slightly more ambition. I think you have to aim big in order to become viable. So a group of 3, 4, 5, maybe even more schools in China. Some of the groups are looking to open it upwards of 10 schools across the China mainland. Have probably, if they can get over the initial hurdles and can get good investment streams for the individual schools, have got a better chance of being successful because they can develop economies of scale. They can then train teachers themselves, they can quality manage, they can create curriculum, pedagogical resource centers. They can have central teams for things like school design, for operations, for financing, for HR. And all those functions will cut costs in the individual school and encourage the pursuit of excellence and quality. And when something goes wrong, be able to deal with it there and then. So when that happens, the school group will begin to get reputation and will continue to become seen as a viable option in the broader marketplace. For those individual schools, or those who stay slightly more on the periphery, I think they're more likely to be less successful, less quality, and therefore the Chinese market will bypass them and go on to other alternatives. It's a very cut and thrust market.
Mark, did you want to respond to that, or?
Yeah, no, look, I think I agree. I don't think it's uniquely in the education sector either. I think, look, there will be always the room for some individual iconic schools to be very successful. But I think if you really want to make a big splash, it's like David says, you have to have a certain, minimum level of, business in China. And I think this goes back again to having the right partner who's got the right strategy. Because it is China, it's a very large country, and it's not, it's very likely that whoever's going to really succeed in China will be a Chinese group. So if you've got the right partner, you can play a role in being part of the success story in China. So I think that's, and I think it's relatively clearly defined. I think the Chinese partners will respect what the UK school is bringing to the investment. And the Chinese partner, you'd want to look at them. Are they not just people who are good at education or educators, but are they business people that can really roll out the schools? Because like David said, there are a few schools. I haven't met many of them who want to just do one school. I think most schools think it's not worth the hassle to set up one school in Beijing or one in Shanghai. Most are looking at 5 or 6 schools or more. And that's often the problem. Can you get a partner that can really roll it out? Because really, despite what the contract says, I think in life, if the school is not wildly successful and the partner loses interest, it doesn't matter what the contract says. You're not going to roll out the schools. The only way that you roll out schools is you have a success story and it builds upon it.
And thanks for that, Mark. I think, sorry, there was an echo there. Thanks a lot for that, Mark. We will discuss a little in future episode, a little bit more about how to find the right partner for your China market entry. So please jump ahead to that if you'd like. As for this episode, thank you for watching and catch you next time.